Previously on We Live Here.
Well, they'd go down to one of the houses and say, well, there's a colored family moved down the street from you. Now, we'll give you 13 for your house today. No telling what it'll be worth tomorrow. So if I was you, I'd sell right now. And then they'd find the black family and, pitch the house to a black family at a higher rate. And then, they'd go to the white families down the street and say, well, now there's two of them. If I was you, I'd get out right now.
Hey, it's me, Tim.
And me, Camille. And today we're bringing you a story about mice.
I was asleep like 2:30 in the morning. Two of them fell out of my radiator.
This is Yolanda Norman. She's a resident of Clinton Peabody, a 31-building public housing development just south of downtown St. Louis.
After the two, they just came out the stove and everywhere. They was everywhere in my apartment, bathroom, coming out the kitchens, and they came through my utility closet. I was catching at least 4 or 5 a week.
Yolanda first noticed mice 5 years ago, but she says it got much worse last year. That's when Laura Gully first heard about the problem.
I am Director of Strategic Initiatives here at Generate Health.
Laura's organization, Generate Health, works to improve community health outcomes, especially for black mothers.
Part of Laura's work involves educating moms on safe sleep practices, like putting your baby in a crib or box instead of sleeping with them in your bed. And Laura heard about the mice problem at a community meeting last summer.
Families weren't putting their children to sleep alone in a crib, as was stated as to be the safe practice, because of the mice infestation.
And as the situation got worse, it took a toll on Yolanda.
I couldn't sleep. The therapist, I was seeing him way more than I ever did. And the psychiatrist, he was dealing with me. He gave me more medicine because it was affecting my sleep a whole lot.
Yolanda says residents felt like the housing authority wasn't listening or doing enough.
Because they was like looking down and not believing us and kept saying, oh, it's nothing, but it's a big issue because y'all not living in there. The day I saw the 2 mice fall out the radiator, I knew it was it. I couldn't take it no more.
She left her apartment in Clinton Peabody.
I had just paid my rent, and I feel like if I'm paying my rent, why am I leaving my home? But I knew I couldn't deal with the mice situation.
In some ways, Clinton Peabody is a relic from a bygone era.
Built in 1942, it was constructed in an age of massive and, at the time, segregated public housing complexes. St. Louis, of course, had one of the most well-known cautionary tales of this model, Pruitt-Igoe.
Disinvestment and public policy mistakes led officials to literally blow up Pruitt-Igoe, and other large complexes have had similar fates across America.
And though the Section 8 voucher program allows for far more people to use housing assistance on the private market, there's still a huge chunk of people who live in public housing today.
About 2 million according to the government stats. And of the roughly 5,600 people living in buildings owned by the St. Louis Public Housing Authority, almost 1,000 live in Clinton Peabody.
But in communities like ours, older public housing stock has fallen into disrepair or has been plagued by persistent problems. And if you take a step back, you might start to wonder if lessons from things like Pruitt-Igoe remain unlearned.
So, on today's episode, we tell you what life is like for our neighbors living in 1940s era public housing in the 21st century, and how the past of public housing is still very much alive today. From St. Louis Public Radio and PRX, this is We Live Here, a show for people somewhere on the woke spectrum.
The ultimate responsibility for Clinton Peabody falls at the feet of the St. Louis Housing Authority.
And Executive Director Cheryl Lovell says they first noticed a pattern of complaints in the spring of last year.
We increased the frequency of the extermination. The management agent also increased what we were calling at the time assessments. They would go inspect a unit and plug any holes that were noticed, because really one of the issues with mouse infestation is their ability to get inside. and then they would also provide traps.
And they also employed a more unusual tactic at the end of the summer: cats.
That got a lot of notice from local TV news. And here's something from Elliot Davis. He's a reporter at the local Fox affiliate in St. Louis.
The cats are kept in the basement of one of the buildings with a cat door for them to go in and out of to roam the grounds of the complex looking for mice to kill. We could not get a picture of the cats because they scattered when the door was open. Are you guys gonna be
Many major cities use colonies of feral cats to help. It was never intended to be a cure-all for rodent infestation, but to be a tool, one of the tools in the arsenal to be able to use for rodent control, mice particularly in this case.
Okay, so this was not meant to be a cure-all, but still, when you hear stories from residents about them being too paranoid to sleep or being afraid for their children's health, getting 6 feral cats, it feels like a stretch.
There were some inherent challenges with that approach.
This is Laura Gully again. She's with Generate Health, the organization that's trying to reduce sudden infant death syndrome in St. Louis.
They're wild. And when you have small children, that is a hazard. And individuals that have respiratory or asthmatic kinds of conditions, that poses another health hazard.
Word started to spread about the problems at Clinton Peabody. Legal Services of Eastern Missouri got involved, helping residents secure emergency transfers and counseling residents on their right to safe, habitable housing.
State Senator Jamila Nasheed and state reps Bruce Franks and Michael Butler held an emergency meeting last September to hear from residents.
Yeah, it was a standing room only crowd attendance today when they met with officials in North.
This is local TV reporter Elliot Davis again covering that meeting.
The head of the Housing Authority, Cheryl Lovell, got an earful from frustrated tenants.
Back to the mice traps that they give out. The mice are so educated, they jump over.
The St. Louis Health Department began inspecting units and issued violations to the Housing Authority.
And when the Housing Authority didn't fix the problems, the Health Department took the somewhat unusual step of taking the Housing Authority to court.
Listen, you don't have to be a reporter for long to know that when agencies start suing each other, you got some issues on your hands.
Meanwhile, Yolanda Norman and other residents felt like they were shouldering most of the blame.
Because social media was downgrading us. They live in filth. We all don't live in filth. Some people do have nasty appointments. They are not taking care of their unions, but it's also the housing authority. We're renting from them. It's they managers get up and stop sitting at this desk every day, do house inspection once a year like they supposed to. Maybe we wouldn't have a big effect of mice problems down here.
Yolanda is right, because the Housing Authority says the main culprit in all this are the buildings themselves.
Mice can get into cracks as small as a dime, and there are a lot of little cracks in Clinton Peabody.
These projects were built in 1942, and they haven't had interior renovations since the 1990s.
In late 2017, the health department found mice in 165 units.
They was like looking down and not believing us and kept saying, oh, it's nothing, but it's a big issue because y'all not living in there. We're the ones have to live. Y'all getting our rent money, so why y'all can't take care of us like we come every month on time? I pay my rent every month on time, so why I wasn't being looked at and taken care of? That's how I looked at the situation.
As the issue gained traction in the media, it moved up the political ladder.
And got bipartisan condemnation from Missouri's Democratic and Republican U.S. Senate candidates. Incumbent Democratic U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill visited Clinton Peabody and vowed to hold authorities accountable and empower residents.
And Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley, a Republican who's vying for McCaskill's seat this fall, has launched an investigation and a lawsuit into the Housing Authority's response.
The Health Department, for its part, ended up agreeing to a mediation settlement that held the Housing Authority legally accountable for taking some steps to combat the mice infestation. some of which the Housing Authority had already started.
In fact, the Housing Authority says to date, it's spent more than $300,000 to try and fix the cracks and get rid of the mice.
Things at Clinton Peabody seem to have gotten better. The most recent inspection in August of this year found 6 units with mice, down from 165 last year.
And there is now a special hotline for residents to report mice issues. And after being gone for about a year, Yolanda Norman has moved back too.
Coming back, when my daughter called me, it was like, okay, I'm coming home. She didn't believe me. I got home. I had the lights on. I'm constantly looking around. I still do it right now because I don't know if they'll come back or not, but I feel better. I'm in my own bed. I ain't got to lay on no couch for a year. And it's wonderful to be back at home.
Laura Gully at Generate Health is also feeling a little bit more optimistic.
The response that I get in doing outreach and connecting with residents are that things are getting better and they're not seeing as many mice. Some don't see any at all. Some see every now and again. But from where we started with seeing daily, I just talk to some residents and they say, well, I'm not seeing them every day, maybe like every other day. To now, I hardly see them at all, or I don't have that problem anymore. There is what I'd like to coin is like a culture of poverty, where there are individuals that are concerned about retaliation, concerned about their living space, that if they use their voice and they make too much noise, that would jeopardize their housing, this place of residence. And there are others that where they're currently living is as good as it's going to get. They don't want to upset the apple cart and are concerned that speaking out or that this is better than sleeping out on the street. And quite frankly, can't blame them for trying to maintain their living space, only it's not safe. It's not safe, particularly when you have young children, when you have pregnant women, if you have elderly. It's not safe for anyone to live in an environment where, we've learned some of the individuals that were, having to remove 52 mice from one unit alone. It's not acceptable, and it's unconscionable that anyone would have to live in an environment of that nature.
As for the St. Louis Housing Authority, Lovell says her agency could have responded sooner.
In the next few weeks, she's expecting a consulting report that will detail the cost to renovate or rebuild Clinton Peabody.
The St. Louis Housing Authority says it will take the report's findings to residents and collect their feedback.
In the meantime, organizations like Generate Health and Legal Services of Eastern Missouri continue to work with residents affected by mice at Clinton Peabody.
They'll be paying especially close attention in the coming months as temperatures fall and mice look for a warm place to live.
It would have been easy to just told you guys the story of the mice at Clinton Peabody, but it would also be only about half the story.
Because the things going on here in St. Louis are in many ways a mirror of life in public housing just across the Mississippi River, except in some ways, in East St. Louis, it's worse.
Which is why a local journalist found it very curious when a year ago, HUD Secretary Ben Carson came to town and declared all was well.
And he came and ended what they call federal receivership. The HUD had taken over the housing authority in East St. Louis, and that's its sort of strictest sanction against housing authorities. It had done that in 1985.
This is the reporter we were talking about.
Hi, my name is Molly Parker. I'm a reporter with the Southern Illinoisan based in Carbondale.
Molly has spent the last year investigating HUD-subsidized housing in small and mid-sized communities. And her reporting pointed out a stark fact.
Even as many people were happy to finally get local control back of the community's public housing, the conditions of that housing is pretty poor.
They talked about how much progress had been made between HUD and the local officials, while at the same time, their own HUD inspectors had come in and failed 9 of their 12 large public housing projects. And each of those developments could include multiple buildings and multiple sites. So we're really talking about a lot of their buildings were deemed, unsafe.
The consequences of these conditions may have proved fatal, as shown by the story of a woman named Alexis Winston.
Alexis Winston was a young mom who had moved into the East St. Louis Housing Authority's John Robinson Homes in the spring of 2017. She lived there just a few short months, and she was very tragically killed in her apartment complex. The intruder, according to police, broke in through her first floor window, shattered the glass, came upstairs, and fatally shot her while her infant child was nearby. She, according to family members, her mom and several of her sisters say that Miss Winston made repeated requests to the housing authority to fix her broken window. It didn't lock properly from the outside, and it also was missing a flat security screen commonly seen on others throughout the complex. When I asked the housing authority about this, they cited a lack of funds to repair windows, and part of the issue is these buildings are so old, standard windows don't fit. These were built in the 1940s.
Now, we should note that many people in St. Louis live in old houses.
Yeah, we're an old city, at least by American standards.
Right? But we can't stress enough that this is not your cute, well-preserved mid-century bungalow.
And other people who live in the complex Alexis lived in at the time of her murder told St. Louis Public Radio reporter Ashley Lisenby they're desperate to leave.
Ashley works on the station's Sharing America team, covering race, ethnicity, and culture. She teamed up with Molly this summer to tell stories of people at the John Robinson Apartments.
That's where I met Farlin Wilson. Do you mind showing me around a little bit? Farlin is a mom of 3, and she'd been living there for about 3 years.
Close the door, children. Can you roll?
And she applied for a voucher to get out of the projects, but found that very difficult, found the process kind of confusing, and didn't know when she would be leaving.
And while they're waiting to get their vouchers, what kind of just living conditions are they dealing with?
Yeah, they're pretty shocking and really difficult living conditions. She had been battling mold in her home, mice, and she had some cats that were helping out with that problem. But she said that each time that she filed a complaint about something that she was struggling with in her unit, that no one was really answering the call.
6 months, wasn't it, to get a vanity?
Yes.
6 months to get a sink put in my bathroom. I had nothing but a tub and a toilet and no door. A tub and a toilet and no door at all, period. What privacy is that for myself or my children? I went around every week. I would wait every Thursday, and I would go there every Thursday. Someone's still gonna come and say, is someone gonna come and fix it? Someone gonna come and fix it? Can you put this on? And when the guy came here to fix it, I'm showing him one thing. I didn't come to look at none of that. We got you first on the list. We gonna get you a vanity in, and still had to go and find one out of an apartment. That's a used one. They had supposed to order the new one. No. And he told me, Blakely, I didn't come here to do anything. I'm going to get somebody to come over here and fix this vanity. Everything surely is going wrong all at once. Yes, because you all never come out and do what you are supposed to. You know what we put on these lists for you all that needs to be done. It needs to be done, and they don't do it. And it's sad. It's really sad. They don't do it.
So, what is going to happen to public housing in East St. Louis?
In a word, unclear.
And that's the same for public housing around the country.
Molly says the challenges are undeniably daunting.
The backlog of repairs nationally, by some estimates, is approaching $50 billion at public housing authorities. So you can see this problem really starkly in communities that have really old housing stock, particularly communities that were much larger at the time and the era in which they were built. It would be so expensive to invest at this point in renovating some of these projects that it would be cheaper to build new, but there's just not programs available in economically distressed towns in particular that can't tap into the private market to rebuild the housing. So you have a situation where people are living in public housing that is just getting worse and worse.
During his visit to give the reins back to local East St. Louis leaders, HUD Secretary Ben Carson says there will be a transition plan.
And Molly and Ashley say they don't envy the people who are now supposed to come up with the next set of solutions.
The frustration from the residents is it's so evident. You know, there's no family, especially if they have children, who ever wants to live in an unsafe environment. But, you know, there's a lot of different opinions about how you move forward. There's, you know, programs where people can get private market vouchers. For some people, the desire to relocate, you know, is certainly something they talk about, but that's also not a one-size-fits-all solution. There's many people who want to be able to remain in East St. Louis. It's a long-standing historic community, deeply rooted African-American city in Illinois. For some people, that's their social network. It's their family nearby. It's schools that they're familiar with. You know, so it's I'm sure it requires a variety of solutions. But it does seem like they're a long time coming. Everyone wants safe housing, and trying to figure out how to meet everyone's sort of needs and requests for how to do that. It is difficult when, again, the state and federal government are not necessarily offering programs to move forward with affordable housing, and the local government, as with most of our local governments in Southern Illinois, doesn't have the capacity financially to do it themselves. Right.
What Molly's comment reminded me of was meeting Arthea Jackson, and she lives in the Matheson Manor homes, and she is the person who's been waiting the longest on the St. Clair County housing voucher list for 30 years. She's been on that list. And so Arthea's in her 60s now. She raised her kids in the projects. She has raised a family there. When I sat down with her, she was sitting on her couch with a wall full of that legacy. But the entire time, she had this hope that she would move out of the projects into private housing. So Arthea now is looking for the possibility of senior housing, which is another long waiting list ahead of her. But that's the situation that I saw when I was there.
Farlin, the mother with small children who's been trying to get a housing voucher to move out of the projects, says she doesn't have any more time to wait.
I'm working now, and I'll save and I'll move before I sit and wait on a list or somewhere where it's not safe, because it's not safe out here. I'm tired of the gunshots every night, having to make my kids lay on the floor, scared of a bullet coming this way because a bullet has no name. And I just can't see myself doing this another year.
Both reporters say it's been impossible not to be affected by what they saw and the people they met in East St. Louis.
For me, the moment that stuck with me was standing in Farlin's home. And I had a weird moment, I think, as a journalist, where this wall, I think that we pretend is there, but it's really not when you're dealing with people struggling with particular issues. And she's sitting at her kitchen table, and I'm standing over her with my mic and my kit, and we're talking, and she started to well up with tears, and then I started to well up, and I thought, oh no, that's not professional, I can't do that. But that moment, talking to her, I will always remember, because it was human, it was raw, and I felt compassion just in that moment for what she felt so strongly about.
It's really sad that they do us like this. I mean, just because, you know, black low-income families, a lot of us try and a lot of us don't. A lot of us care and a lot of us probably won't and never will. But I care because I have 4 children that I just want better for. I wasn't raised like this. And it doesn't even have to be like this. It's what they making and it's what you making. And like I said, my apartment is compared to what I've seen. Wow.
Thank you for sharing with me and allowing me in your home.
Yes, ma'am.
Obviously, I mean, I really think if there's any bias in having a belief that people should have very basic safe, decent housing, I'm willing to own that. People should have the right to feel safe in their homes, and you know, you go home and you lock your own door and your windows lock and you feel very blessed for those things. But you know, these shouldn't be things that some communities have and not others.
So we couldn't have done this episode without the help of reporters and producers who are already doing great work about public housing.
Specifically, producer Kate Essig, who spent weeks reporting the Clinton Peabody mice story in St. Louis.
And Ashley Listenby and Molly Parker, who turned their attention to what's going on in East St. Louis in collaboration with the ProPublica local reporting network.
And we've certainly covered public housing issues on our show before in past seasons, and we'll put a link to a couple of those episodes up at our website, welivhere.show.
As well as Molly and Ashley's work.
Next time on We Live Here.
When we started the program, we didn't know how successful we would be. We were concerned about backlash.
I done had so many people take so many application fees and stuff and didn't give me hope.
And for some reason that kind of clicked for me, and I was like, okay, you're right. We don't need permission. People can move wherever they want to move.
And actually, to be honest with you, there's more black people in Chesterfield than people think.
We Live Here is produced by me, Camille Stanley.
And me, Tim Lloyd.
Alana Sistrunk is our associate producer.
And Robert Peterson, he's the program director here at St. Louis Public Radio. He's our boss.
And from St. Louis Public Radio and PRX, this is We Live Here.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.